beginning, they put great demands on the parenting process. There are other compliant children who don't call for so much time and energy. That is true in any series of relationships. That's the way life is. There are going to be those people who put tremendous demands on leadership, tremendous demands on the people of God to work with them because they struggle so greatly. Now, if I were to divide those people up into 5 categories, they would be these categories. Number 1 are the wayward. The wayward. They're the people you're always trying to get off the edges. They run everything to the edge. They want to climb the fence. They want to go outside the boundaries. They want to step over the line, violate the law. They're never really in sync with where you're going. They're always out on the fringes. Never with the program, never really involved continuously doing their duty, never faithful in service or giving. They tend to be sometimes idle, lazy, loafers, in the way of progress, disorderly. They can be AWOL, they can be apathetic or indifferent, and sometimes they can even be contentious. Everything from being uninvolved to being rebellious. They just push the edges all the time. Maybe they don't get into the place where you want to discipline them. They're just on the borderline all the time. On the borderline of commitment, on the borderline of faithfulness, on the borderline of service, using their gift, on the borderline of contributing positively to the development of the church. There are those fringe people out there just right on the edge of everything. Never really concerned and committed to the heart and flow of the life of the church. The second category of people I would call the worried. These are the no-risk people who basically operate out of fear. Fear that somebody won't love them, fear that they might fail, fear that problems might arise that overwhelm them. If group 1 tests the edges of everything, this group huddles in the middle. They never get near the edge. They're motivated by fear. They're driven by a lack of courage. They can think of 10 reasons why something could never succeed. They have no sense of adventure. They hate change. They fear the unknown. They worry about the consequences of everything. All the issues of life are really more than they can bear. And so they go around generally dismayed and occasionally depressed. Then thirdly, there are the weak. Not only the worried, I should say, but the weak. These are people who spiritually are just weak. They have fallen to temptation. They have fallen to sin. They keep trying to scramble back up, dust themselves off, get back in the flow. But they seem to be highly vulnerable because of long habits, because of bad influences, because of their own spiritual weakness. They want to do what's right. They have a desire to do what's right, but they sort of fuddle along in the Christian life, stumbling, picking themselves back up. It's sort of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and maybe sometimes 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. They embarrass themselves. They embarrass the church. They goof up their testimony, and they are occasionally a real dishonor to the Lord. They're just feeble and susceptible to temptation and sinful patterns. And fourthly, then, there are what I would call the wearisome. They just frustrate you. They're the people who never get it. They never quite catch up. They can't get focused. They can't concentrate. They drag their feet, they miss the point, or they forget the point, or they ignore the point. They never seem to speed up, get with the group, and move at the rate that everybody else is moving at. They exasperate you because they never seem to change. And you try this, and you try that, and you try this, and they never seem to change. They're the kind of people to whom I have often spoken and said, well, why don't you do that? I did that. It didn't work. Oh, well, why don't you try doing this? Take a little time and read 5 Psalms I tried that. It doesn't work. And, well, here's a series of tapes, so maybe you could listen to those. They come back, I listened to those. Didn't help. Oh, they just exasperate you. They exhaust your options. And you keep trying and trying and trying, and you never seem to get them where they need to be. Those are the wearisome folks. And then finally, there are the downright wicked. Those are the folks who just do evil in the church. They do harm to other Christians through gossip or slander. They break up relationships. They fracture the unity of the Spirit. They violate the bond of peace. They are unloving. They break up marriages. They divorce their spouses. They're unkind to their children, or there are children who are disobedient to their parents. They defile daughters and sons. They just sin. And as a church, we deal with all these people. I mean, the standard of getting in is you have to be a sinner to get in, and you have to be an unworthy sinner to get in, so we assume we've got this problem. The wayward, the worried, the weak, the wearisome, and the wicked. And it's little wonder that growing a healthy flock is a challenging business, isn't it? All these folks need help. And with all today that's being written about the church and the growth of the church, all the sophisticated stuff, all the homogeneity principles, cultural demographics, all the subtle strategies, all the entertaining methods, and all the advertising and marketing technique to build the church, little of anything is ever being said about spiritual health of the flock, about how you grow people into Christ-likeness. That is the great challenge. Getting a crowd is not nearly as difficult as building a Christ-like disciple. That is a very challenging situation because you've got people in all these categories at all varying points in their own personal life, and you're trying to move them to the single goal of the likeness of Jesus Christ. Churches are spending all kinds of money on stuff that is purely external, superficial, that is not going to change the inside. And when the church is changed on the inside, it really becomes a force for evangelism and righteousness in the world. The Apostle Paul, you must note as you read through the New Testament, put all his energy and his prayers into growing a spiritually healthy flock. And that's the real work of the church. It's not just my work, it's your work as well. In fact, look at Colossians, if you will, for a moment. And there's a pervasive attitude that we're going to address today that is essential to this work. And it's found in Colossians chapter 3 and verse 12. And you will see here that he's referring to all of us, because he says in verse 12, and so as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved. That's all Christians. All of us are elect. We have been made holy by the righteousness of Christ, and we are the beloved of God. All of us in the church must put on a heart of compassion. We must deal with each other compassionately, with kindness, he says. Later in that verse, gentleness, patience. Verse 13, bearing with one another. In other words, there needs to be a patient, gentle, humble, kind compassion toward people as they struggle through all of the issues that debilitate them, whether waywardness, worry, weakness, being wearisome, or just being wicked. All of us who belong to the Lord, all of us who are the chosen, the holy in Christ, the beloved of God, are called